Welcome, everyone, to season 6 of the Runners Roundtable, where each episode is dedicated to a different running memory that highlights how running is more than pace. And even though it is about pace, it can be more than pace. And what keeps us engaged in running is sometimes those things that take us beyond the pace. So I'm really excited to have another episode with another guest. It's Coach Corky is here with us this week or this episode. And I was on Instagram earlier trying to see if I could find when I first started following you, because that's usually one of those things where I'm like, okay, wait, when did I first start following people? Like, how did different people come into my orbit? And I couldn't figure it out, but I saw you started your Instagram account like in 2014. And I'm like, it had to have been around there because I first got on Instagram in 2012. And my whole point with being on Instagram was to share my running journey. And that's where I'm like trying to put myself back in 2012, back in 2013, 2014, probably when you came around. I'm like, oh, I probably started following Coach Corky because I think at the time, and maybe even still, you were a no nonsense person. And that was something that I always appreciated, where you were just like so real with everything that you did, with how you carry yourself when you're racing, how you carry yourself as a teacher, right? Like when you are instructing people on a treadmill. And I'm almost positive that was it, because I, in general, am very much so drawn to fiery women. And that's when I think of you. I'm like, yep, she just doesn't give a shit. Like, and I'm sure you do. And I'm not saying that you don't, but that was just one of the things that whenever I think of you, I think of someone who's like, this is who I am. I'm going to make the decisions that make sense for me in my life. And I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm not going to apologize for how I show up. I'm not going to apologize for how I do things. I'm not going to apologize for any of that. So I just want to give you your flowers right now and just let you know that, like, I am someone who started following you probably because I liked that you didn't give a shit. And again, not to say that you don't, but it was probably because you were like, this is who I am. This is how I run. This is why I run. And I'm not going to apologize for it. So, with all of that said, I want to turn it over to you to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to us and to tell us a little bit about who you are as a runner.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for having me on and for that incredible introduction. I think I joined Instagram. That was a weird transitional part of my life where I was coming from the acting and modeling industry full time. And I had started racing in 2010. I think I started the Instagram account honestly because I was a participant and a finalist in the Wilhelmina Model fitness modeling competition. And everybody else, the other four models, all were on social media and had very big presence for the time. I don't even know what big presence was in 2013. And so that was kind of the push where I was like, well, I guess I got to go do this thing. And I just kept it kind of as a very honest journal of my life. There's a lot of cat content on there. There's a lot of, because I'm a very proud cat mom, there's a lot of my training and my racing and the highs and the lows. And I know that social media tends to be a highlight reel and it looks like everybody else has it figured out. They're crushing it all the time. And that's just not real. And so I want everyone out there who maybe has eyes on my account to recognize that, yes, I'm going to celebrate the awesome things and the big things. And, but they're also only a part of the story and a part of the equation. So yeah, I am, I think, unapologetically who I am. I didn't used to be. I think sometimes there's a growing up process that happens and it happens to us all at different times in our life, but damn, it is liberating when it happens. So thank you for for being a part of my I don't give a shit journey here.
Yeah, again, like I was just thinking, I'm like, okay, what I'm trying to, go through that Rolodex of what do I know about this person who's coming on the podcast? And, I went through your social media. I'm like, that's right. That's what it is. It's just that I'm here and this is how I do it. And it really, I think, especially with running, it can feel kind of confusing sometimes in terms of who you're running for or why you're running. And so for me, it's always refreshing to come across people that are like, no, this is just what it is. And I'm not doing it for you. I'm not doing it for your approval. I can care less about your approval. Like, this is something that's for me. And did you, I guess, were you always like that? And if not, can you just give us some tips on how to become more like that?
I was actually quite the opposite of who I am now, as a young person and into college and even in my mid 20s. I was a people pleaser. I was one of those people that it's not that I did it for validation per se. It's that I didn't want to disappoint anyone. That
Mm,
I viewed, maybe it's the oldest sibling, oldest daughter thing, probably a lot to unpack there. But I was somebody who didn't want to let anyone down. And, in the performing arts industry, when you're dealing with agents and managers, you always want to be the right fit. And you find out very quickly that you're never going to be right for every job. Someone's going to tell you you're too tall, your shoulders are too wide, you're 27, you should probably lie about your age on your resume because you've already aged out, or
mm,
whatever it is. And, at some point, I think I recognized that I didn't want my worth, my value, and how I viewed myself as being up to the discretion of everybody else. And running honestly became a big part of it. And I think training for my first marathon gave me the opportunity to do something that was purely for myself. And this was when I was still working in the film industry. I was working on the very first season of Blue Bloods, now to date myself, back in 2010, doing a lot of stand-in and photo double work. So I was on set for long hours, but it's a kind of behind the scenes role. So you really don't get to practice your craft, but yet you're there and you're collecting your pension and your health care. But anyway, I found that my training that I fit in when I could while working unpredictable hours on the streets of New York kind of became my solace. It became something that felt like it was my own personal project. And I felt more empowered every day by seeing and feeling the progress of running, feeling easier, hitting paces, running distances. And I didn't know anything at this point in time, by the way, as a runner. We know what we know, the printout runner's world that, again,
mm-hmm.
I'm dating myself here. Your girl's 42 now. And I was 26 at the time. That was like my holy Bible. The internet wasn't what it is. You didn't have these resources, these social media accounts. And so I was just learning and taking the feedback that my body gave me and applying it and moving forward. And sometimes ignorance is bliss. And not to say that there isn't a lot of incredible resources out there now, there totally are. But I found that journey of training, setting the goal of a Boston qualifier in that first marathon, rising to the occasion, achieving the goal, and feeling strong and empowered. And my life changed when I crossed that finish line. I know it's so cliche and we talk about it in running all the time, but there was a mental shift for myself where I saw my worth and my value as a person, but also what my body was capable of and what it did as so much more than measurements at a modeling go-see or, a camera test for a new TV show. I all of a sudden saw and felt myself as something free of any and all that judgment and something that I did for myself that I was really proud of. I also didn't know that qualifying for Boston was considered super hard. The whole Boston qualifier, the running industry, and the quest has obviously exploded since 2010. But yeah, I found that just the training and the running kind of gave me that mental shift of I don't give a shit as much about what everybody else is projecting on me. What I care about is what's making me happy, what's making me feel good, what makes me feel strong, what makes my body feel um, worthy as it is, and to start to see and feel those changes, especially when I had agents that would start to tell me now I was too athletic looking because I was starting to pick up weights. I didn't look this way, or my sizes were changing a little bit. And a part of me a year or two before probably would have panicked and figured out what crash diet or thing I could or should have done, which again, a lot to unpack there, and that industry is what it is. But I kind of recognized when I had it roll off my shoulders and I was like, I don't really care. How my body is changing is a product of what I'm doing and how I'm feeling, and I'm happier than ever in it. That's where I started to kind of, without realizing it maybe at the time, start stepping away emotionally from that industry. And I became more interested and curious about training principles and how do I get better as a runner? And how does recovery impact training? And what is a track workout? And all of these things that were completely out of my orbit beforehand that I all of a sudden had a real interest in. And so I think sometimes we develop emotionally and mentally in a surprising way while we're doing something that feels mostly physical.
I just I want to like cry happy tears with everything that you're saying, because that was something I actually was writing about it yesterday for my for myself, of how when I started running, it was purely for the physical, right? It was kind of like I was running for, I wanted to show my daughters just what it was like to be an active person. And with time, I realized that running was something bigger. Like running was a way to tap into that freedom. And so when you said freedom, I'm like, oh, yes, you are speaking my language, because it was and still is a moment to disconnect. I think is maybe the best way to put it, like to disconnect from the expectations, to disconnect from the responsibilities, to kind of disconnect from everything that's external, and to really focus on being with myself, with my breath, with how my body is feeling, with what my thoughts are. Like it is a way to be free within myself that I don't really get from a lot of other movement. And so everything that you're saying is just so beautiful, because you are discovering something new about yourself through something that a lot of people just write off, right? Like a lot of people can write off as like, oh, it's just running, or either it's just running, or I can't do that because it's bad for my knees, or something like that, right? Like I can't do it because of XYZ. And it's like, but you're missing out on what else running can give you. And for you, it happened to have been, running a marathon and training for the marathon. That's what did it for you. And I just want to ask, because I know what the answer is going to be, but I want people to hear it from you. Does someone need to run a marathon in order to tap into that feeling?
No, absolutely not. I think whatever it is that feels exciting, a little scary, and worth putting in the work for. And I think also too, that's part of what made me so excited about the career change and being a coach is what I went through, and the empowerment and the feeling of worthiness and having something that's selfishly mine, that's unrelated to anything and anyone else. It's such an incredible thing to have that it's the greatest honor, I think, and privilege as a coach to help other people go on that journey for themselves, wherever that's taking them, whatever that race distance is, to empower them to have that same sort of opportunity to view themselves and live in their bodies and their minds in my opinion, a better way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of, I feel like when I became a coach, it was partly because people were starting to come to me to ask for training advice. And I was like, wait, I want to know, like, when I say this, because similar to you, I was getting runner's worlds. Like it was their training plans were very much so, or if not, I had some of Jeff Galloway's books. It was very much the era of having books. Like I have the Hanson's marathon method. Like that was kind of the era of my training of I need to have the book in order to follow the plan. Now there are a lot of resources, which is wonderful, but it can also get really overwhelming when there's so much information out there. But I got my coaching certification because I wanted to know what I was talking about. I wanted to explain to someone, oh, here, this is why a training plan has this, or this is why I'm asking you to try this or to do this. And I just think of how beautiful it is that because you went for a run and because you trained for a marathon, you have had a whole new life open up to you that probably could have never predicted for yourself. So the question I have is just, how did you embrace the pivoting?
Oh man, it is not easy. I think, and we could talk about how oversaturated the coaching industry is now and how easy it is to get a certification and is a certification enough and how things have changed with AI. And but I will say a career change is always hard. No matter what you're starting out doing or where you're coming from and how related those industries are or not. Mine couldn't have been in many ways more different. Um, it's really hard. I think it takes a fire in your belly to say, I'm going to do the work. I'm going to not assume because I have a certification that I'm going to gain clientele. That you need to be business savvy. You need to think with the business mindset as well as the passion of I want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also too to think through how do you make that transition from one income revenue to another. And in New York City, iron sharpens iron. I think it's an incredible place to be an entrepreneur and be a small business owner, but also it's a city that will eat you alive if you do not hustle. You cannot sit there and just say, I have this little website, please come see me, or whatever it is, and expect that people are going to find you. The competition's also fierce. I will say having a really supportive partner who I talked through like how do we handle the financials of I'm not going to be on commercial sets making union industry rates necessarily. I'm going to be trading that for waking up at 4 in the morning and meeting clients
Mm-hmm.
in the city to pace them during a polar vortex because I'm going where the work is happening. And then I'm also at 10 o'clock the same day, but in the evening, going to meet a personal training client all the way up in the Bronx. Um, there was a lot of hustle. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into it. I didn't get it right out of the gate, but also recognizing when something isn't serving you or isn't serving your big vision, how to pivot and learn from those mistakes, just like we learn from a bad run or a bad race, taking that feedback. I think I also got really lucky in that I was able, and again, it took being very proactive of building a network beyond Coach Corky runs with getting involved with assisting other coaches that had been in this for
Mm-hmm.
a long time that were much better than me and building community, but also watching them work and seeing how the other runners responded to their coaching styles and organization or didn't respond to it, right? And figuring out what's my niche and how do I fit into it. But also, this was around the era of the treadmill studios becoming a thing. And I remember so clearly in fall 2014, there was a New York Times article about this new treadmill studio, the first of its kind, I believe in the country, Mile High Run Club that was opening. And I saw it on Facebook because all the runners in my running space were sharing it and they were crapping on it. They thought this was the stupidest thing. You can go run for free. Why would I run on a treadmill when I have Central Park and all these things? And I also despised the treadmill at the time. But I saw this as, when I read the article, a real opportunity. And I did not hesitate. I reached out to the CEO and creator, I think via Facebook message, because I was able to find her that way. And we were on a phone call within hours. And then I was in the studio taking a mock class and then auditioning within a week. And I became a full-time coach there. Um, up until 2019 when then I left for some other opportunity and another treadmill class modality, which was then tied to Equinox. But point being, I was developing Coach Corky runs as its own thing while also taking on up to 16 treadmill classes a week. I got myself in a position where I was on salary, where I knew what that income revenue was. I was able to perfect my craft as a treadmill instructor and taking some of the coaching skills you would use outside or use in designing training plans, while also being on the headset, which felt so natural coming from a background in musical theater. And it also gave me the opportunity, whether I meant to or not, to build community and to network with runners. I heard from a runner, in January of this past year, who I had not seen or heard from since leaving Mile High Run Club in 2019, who is now on my private roster. So you don't know what connections you're going to make by being who you are that will at some point become an income revenue stream that you didn't see coming, right? Um, and so I think I positioned myself really well in that I didn't have to be a year or two into my running career as a coach, pacing people in all climates, running back-to-back 20 milers with individuals to just feel like I was getting by. I was able to really lean on the treadmill coaching relatively heavily while also bringing in independently private clients. And so I would encourage anyone who's looking to be a coach to figure out in your own space what connections you have or can make that makes it easier on you because it's so daunting to say, I'm going to create this LLC, I'm going to register it, I'm going to create a website. You can have the most gangbuster killer social media presence in the world. I don't. I don't spend a ton of time on my social media, truly. Um, the algorithms keep changing. And you have now around influencers, and you have all these people who are just, and they're their own thing. But for anyone looking for a running coach, it is a muddied space. And so I think we have to think beyond social media and tech and how do you still make connections with human beings? Because even if I never meet any of my clients who are virtual in person, if I've seen them in person in years past, or they know my voice from the Equinox Plus app where I coach the treadmill classes and outdoor classes for Precision Run, there's already that personal connection. And from there, we feel like we can trust and have a collaborative working relationship.
Yeah, it's so I wrote this down because I think it sums up what you're saying is that what you've been able to do so well is see the potential in connecting the dots, right? And in seeing of like again, not again, but just what you said about the treadmill class and how that was dismissed by a lot of people. And yet it's like I would assume that you probably get a lot of new people to running on the treadmill just because it might feel a little bit safer and it might feel less overwhelming than running outside. It might feel safer, right? Like just safe. Like I'm thinking, I ran on a treadmill this morning. That's where I did my run this morning. And it was just because one, I could not wake up early to run outside. And two, because I am just currently experiencing an unusual amount of anxiety about running outside in the heat. Like I don't know why, but this year I'm starting to feel it like earlier than normal. So the treadmill has been for me very much so a saving grace of like, okay, I can do this and I'm going to be okay. Like it's more of not that I physically can't do it, it's mentally I'm struggling. So just the fact that you saw that potential and you saw where it could go when other people dismissed it is huge because I think, and I'm, oh my God. Okay, I'm gonna ask you this question before we get into your memory because I don't know if you caught what was going on earlier this year when there was just this noise on the internet about some people saying that running on the treadmill is not running.
Hmm.
Did you catch that at all?
Oh, it was impossible not to. And I will say, ever since 2015 and when I joined the roster at Mile High, I have been a treadmill girly. Like I still love being outside more than anything for a run, but I think this winter I ran over 700 miles within 3 months with marathon training on my Woodway. And yeah, I've seen so many incredible runners of all paces and abilities and of goals train almost exclusively on their treadmill. And it's baffling to me the constant, I don't know if it's gatekeeping or people just want to feel superior. It's honestly just stupid because running is running, and whatever way you can do it and that brings you joy and is safe is the way to do it. And yeah, it drives me crazy when people talk about how treadmill running's not real or it's easier or it's this or that. And there are a thousand reasons why somebody might argue one case or the other, and some of it's going to be individual and also the machine you're on, and
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, when I know of runners who are 240 marathoners that train almost exclusively on their treadmills because that's what works for their life. And you've got plenty of professional athletes and Olympians that do a ton of treadmill running. I think case closed.
Yeah.
And I'm just over the running community is overall a wonderful, beautiful space. And there is that noise that is unfortunately also infectious that just wants to put people down, whether it's pace, what distance you have run, how you train. And, you know, every athlete I coach has different resources, and some of them are relying very heavily on a treadmill or cross-training modalities. And others are outside all the time and never touch a treadmill. Some of them strength train a lot, some of them strength train minimally. I mean, there's no set formula for being
Mm-hmm.
a runner and being a successful runner, whatever that means, and however we're defining that for each person. Yeah, it drives me bonkers when people decide they're just going to tear down others because they've decided that the way they do it is the best way.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think running has given so much to me, just like it's given so much to you, that I think we can both agree that it's so incredible how running can transform you. Why would we not want more people to experience that transformation, right? Why would we not want more people to find that same freedom, to find that strength, that empowerment, that even just hearing you speak about your business and being a coach and teaching these treadmill classes of how running has also given you the courage to take those risks and to see the potential in places that others don't see, or to see the possibility of your own growth and your own expansion. And it's running is the foundation of it, right? Like it's all because you years ago were like, let me run a marathon, and here, let's see where it can go. So to me, it's always so strange when people are gatekeeping running, when it's like, if you love running so much, wouldn't you want more people to do it, right? Wouldn't you want more people to experience, even if how they are experiencing it is different than how you are? But who's to say one way is better than the other? And also, just you don't know what the context of someone's life is, and you don't know why they are running the way that they're running. There might be an incredibly valid reason for it, and you are just making these generic statements that take away from a person's accomplishment. It takes away from their experience of it. So I want to thank you for sharing that, because it's always, I love hearing it, things like that, especially from a person who's a coach, because you're like, no, 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 I coach. I see the bigger picture. Like y'all are focused on that little picture, but I see the bigger picture across lots of different people. So I appreciate when a coach tells us that, because it's like, oh, okay, if Coach Corky is saying that, then we need to kind of sit our butts down and just be like, okay, Coach Corky, we got you. We hear you. So thank you. I want to bring us to the topic of this episode it is your favorite running memory and ask you, do you have a memory that you can share with us?
I had to kind of go through the weeds of my memories after like 20 something marathons, five ultras, and it was like, well, which is the one that stands out unrelated to face, right? Because I also wanted to focus on something that wasn't related to my own PRs or breakthrough runs. And I settled on, honestly, the most recent New York City Marathon. And for a couple of reasons. One, as a coach in New York City Marathon, to me, I've decided is one of those races I can never really do from a performance perspective because the majority of my athletes tend to race that race. And when you have, say, between 15 and 25 people all getting ready for one big day, many of whom are always first-time marathoners,
Mhm.
I found I do not have the emotional bandwidth to give them all of the time, the energy, the video check-in chats, numerous of them, right? Planning along, while also being able to switch my brain to focusing on my own performance. So I'm somebody who has historically only ever run New York City Marathon as a pacer for a client, in different capacities over the year. And I have just found that I plan my own racing schedule to kind of protect that weekend so I can be a coach. And I decided a couple of years ago that I had a time qualifier for New York from a different marathon. I had a 3 hour marathon, and I was like, let's just send it on in and see. And my thought was, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it just for fun. I'm going to do it for vibes. I'm going to have a great time. And so that was the goal. And for a lot of reasons, I view New York City Marathon as, even if I weren't a coach, not the race I would go race simply because of the crowds and the logistics. It doesn't serve me as an athlete. I find the crowds overwhelming. And I did find this year in wave one that it was still very tight in places. And again, when I was out there for vibes, not a big deal. But if
Yeah.
I'd been out there racing, it would have really pissed me off. And it would have felt dangerous at times, honestly, because there were scenarios where runners would stop in the middle of the course in Williamsburg to like start scrolling through their next song or text somebody. And it just, those things when you're in a crowd of 60,000 people and the
Hmm.
crowd's coming in on the side, um, it's overwhelming. And I didn't know if I'd even make it to the starting line of this race. My goal, the plan with my coach had been that I was going to race St. George Marathon. I had the honor of getting an elite bib for that race, which would have meant fluids on the course, which absolutely is a game changer, by the way. It's a very luxurious experience. And then New York City Marathon was going to be the very fun for vibes victory lap. But my right hamstring had decided over the summer that it was going to essentially shut down my training entirely for months. And so I was a sitting duck. I had to cancel St. George. I didn't know if New York was going to happen. I think in the month of August, I didn't really run at all. I think maybe I ran a total of 50 miles for the entire month in September. And I did one 18-miler in training. I think I ran two 50-mile weeks. I did no real paced work. And so I went to New York with the goal of just keeping your hamstrings together and celebrating that you're capable of doing this thing. So the original plan of New York being for vibes really became an overwhelming theme of gratitude and a celebration of the sport. And pace didn't matter. I did run incredibly even splits, which I was really proud of on that course. I didn't know what to expect. I crossed the finish line in a 3:27, which, given my lack of training, I was really impressed that my body held up, which also I think goes to show what a decade of consistent running does for you, even when you've had a super spotty season. Um, and yeah, it was just really delightful to run in my favorite city and the city where I became a runner in a way where it wasn't about competition. It couldn't have been about competition, even if I wanted it to be in that moment. And just to take it in and truly embrace the little things about New York City Marathon that make them really special when you're not performance focused.
So I just want to shout out the universe, just, because imagine, I'm just thinking of how much harder the experience would have been mentally had your original intention been to race that race. So it's like, just like, you know what, universe, you did your thing because you had already decided this is going to be a race for the vibes. And then your hamstring said, hey, we're going to have a different kind of party this day. So just shout out to the universe because it, like, in its own weird, like, fucked up way, it worked out. Like, it worked out that you were able to go into that race already with that expectation of, I'm here just for the vibes. Here it's going to be a celebration. And then with your hamstrings, it's almost challenging you more of being like, okay, when we said we are here for the vibes, we are actually here for the vibes. Like, this is what we are coming here to do. And I think it's not only a testament to 10 years of consistent training, but kind of going back to what you said earlier in terms of just like your mind and how your mind has connected to the running beyond that actual, like, the physical act of running, beyond the pace, beyond all of that. And honestly, you ran New York and you had like even split. That right there is like a win. I'm like, yes, queen. Okay, you did it. Like, that right there that is a huge win because what is it that a lot of us runners struggle with in marathons and longer distances in general? It's just maintaining even splits. I am a positive splits queen. Like, that's just what I do. And so to even find that in this race where the buildup was less than ideal, you were still able to make something wonderful out of it. And even just, again, like, kudos to you as well for recognizing that as a coach, this isn't the race where you have the mental capacity to show up differently. Because I always, I tell my athletes, and I'm always like my family already knows, like, whenever I have athletes that are racing, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going out. Like, I'm kind of like tracking them throughout the day. Like, my brain is in a different place. So to add, doing a race, which I did last year with Chicago, I ran Chicago and I had 5 of my athletes did it as well. It was really weird because it's like, I'm here on the race having my experience, but I'm also like on the app checking to see if they're okay. And like, is everyone okay? And like, checking my phone to see if I have any messages. How's everyone feeling? So it is a really interesting experience. And now I want to know, when you're thinking about New York and when you're thinking about the context of this race and the context of your life leading up to the race, how would you say that experience has shaped who you are, not only as a runner, but also as a coach today?
I think it reminded me that we do this for joy. And I love fast paces and I love of being competitive with myself. I am my own worst critic in a lot of ways when it comes to the goals I've had and the setbacks along the way before the breakthroughs. But I think running New York, it was a reminder of the joy and the privilege that it is to run these incredible races, especially because the world majors have gotten so hard to get into. And, I lived in Long Island City for about 10 years. So, I knew I was going to be running past essentially a couple of the buildings I'd lived in, the high rises. And I viewed this kind of as a homecoming and a love letter to the city that shaped Coach Corky Runs, that shaped me as a group fitness instructor, that shaped me as a runner, and allowed me to have that transition in terms of my career from actor to coach in a city that I love so dearly. And it is a hard city, but it is an incredible city. And I remember telling myself pre-race, um, I don't know if I'm going to run New York again because I haven't in, so many years. I've only ever done it through the eyes and supporting somebody else, not thinking about just what's coming in at me and what can I feel and see. When you're pacing somebody, you're always thinking about their needs and caring for them. And I love that role, but it kind of desensitizes your own experience.
Mhm.
So it was a real joy to kind of be able to take it all in and to just embrace the day. And I told myself pre-race to make Queensboro Bridge your make Queensboro Bridge your bitch because I'd run over that thing thousands of times in training. Again, I lived in Long Island City. It's the base of Long Island City. And when I lived in Astoria, that was whether you're in Astoria or Long Island City, like if you're a runner, you're going over that bridge constantly. So I was like, I know this bridge. I could do this with my eyes closed backwards. And everybody else on that bridge always tends to have their coming to Jesus moment. And here I am hooting and hollering with a smile on my face because I'd paced myself well, but also um, my hamstrings were feeling great. And I was so in tune with how lovely it is to run without pain when you've been dealing with it for months too, that it's such a freeing thing to all of a sudden tap back into why we love running and how running's supposed to feel. And it's not supposed to have insane hamstring tendonitis or these things that a lot of us runners sometimes negotiate with and continue to run through. And then I also told myself when you get to the Willis Avenue Bridge, mile 20, again, it's usually carnage. It's usually a lot of walking for people. And I was like, nope, we're running up that thing. I know there's a professional photographer there. They're going to catch me. They're going to catch me smiling. And those were the things I chose to look forward to. Those parts that a lot of runners dread, those parts that my own private clients we talk through because we know those are going to be some of the hard moments. But how do you know that those moments are hard while going into it saying, I'm going to celebrate this. I'm going to embrace this. This is part of what makes New York City Marathon so iconic, right? Now, if I'd been racing it, I'm sure I probably wouldn't have been smiling going over the Willis Avenue Bridge. If I'd been pushing myself to my best, I know it would have been a different experience. But how incredible that we get to decide when we go to these races what our ultimate goal is and how we choose to navigate the highs and lows out there to get us there to the finish line to the best of our ability. And I still was exhausted by the end. I mean, I'm not going to say that 327 was super easy by the end. It was a sunny day. It was a cooler day than we've had in the past, but for somebody who's a heavy sweater and again, who hadn't
Mhm.
done a lot of training in months, I was not very acclimated to anything. I felt that depletion. I felt that I couldn't take in my final gel. I felt all those things that come with a marathon. Um, but I crossed that finish line just so grateful to be a runner, to be a part of the community, and to have had the opportunity because I really was ready to, sit this one out that I didn't know weeks beforehand if this was in the cards. And I just was patient. I just took it one run at a time. And my conclusion and the conversation I had with my coach was if I can do this thing without having a big setback with the hamstrings and I can recover well and move forward, it's absolutely an experience worth having. But I also was ready, if I had to step off the course. If my hamstring had gotten really bad, I also know it's rarely worth dragging our bodies through an injury um, for one finish line medal.
Yeah, especially with a, a race like New York City. And yes, it can be a hard race to get in. But the reason why I say, especially with a race like New York City, it's that it is a race that is going to happen next year, right? Like it
Mhm.
is a race that it's going to continue happening. It's a huge legacy race. So they're not going to let go of 100 plus years of having this race unless they actually have to. So I think it's truly a testament to everything you've learned about yourself as a runner, everything you've learned through coaching others, of understanding that sometimes, and maybe even just like now that I'm speaking out loud, it's also just a testament to your entire journey of being a human, of knowing that sometimes you got to pivot and you have to embrace the pivot. And on the other side of that pivot might be something really, really incredible. So I think this is a nice little just, it's running, but it's also like this really beautiful parallel to your life and your career in the running space of here's what you're doing. You're going to try it out. You're going to be transformed as you do it. But as you move through that transformation, you have to learn how to be okay with the unexpected happening or with maybe what you want it to happen, not happen. So I think that's wonderful. And I think that's, again, I hope, when people listen to these episodes and I know it's like, it's beyond pace. Let's talk about things that are not pace related. And I always say that I want to make it clear to people that pace is important. Your PR races, like those things are important. Like all of that stuff is important. But it's to say that there's so much more to running that's going to keep you engaged with running for the long term, right? Like there's going to be a point for a lot of us that, either one point where you're like, okay, I guess I'm not going to hit another PR for the next decade of my life or whatever the case is. But there has to be something that keeps you motivated as things shift or as things change or as your body communicates with you. So that's just, I love it all. Just the idea of it being like a love letter, the idea of it being this space where you took this race and you truly empowered yourself by it, by having those points where you're like, I know people suffer here and I'm not going to suffer here. So I just love all of that. And now I have a series of questions. You see, there's the dog. now, now I have a series of questions for you, and they're kind of like rapid fire-ish, but it's okay if they're not. But it's just, I'm just curious after hearing this particular story of yours as to what your responses are going to be. But the first question is, if you could go back in time to speak to a younger version of your runner self, what would you say?
Oh man. I think I would tell her to give herself more grace along the way, especially when you have big goals and you come up short of them by a little bit. It can feel insignificant, um, regarding who maybe we want to be or what we just start getting in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd also say trust the process, that we truly do stack one season on another. And often I think we get hyper focused on, I have this marathon on deck, this date. Here's the goal, break 3 hours or bust, right?
Yeah.
That was who I was for a portion of my running journey. And while I'm somebody who, when I put a time out there, I say it out loud on social media, I'm unapologetic about chasing it. I like caring about something, knowing I'm going to take a swing at it, and the odds are good. I may or may not get it because the marathon is a fickle beast and there's so many things that impact race day. But I think it's cool to care. But I also know there have been times where I probably should have taken that extra rest day instead of grinding in in the name of that goal, that sometimes less is more. Sometimes easing off that gas pedal can lead to the next breakthrough and have us feel a little bit better and a little bit less plagued by aches or pains, or a little bit mentally equipped for the next hard workout.
I just like, yes. Um, so kind of flipping that question around is, what hopes do you have for your future runner self?
I hope that she stays healthy. I've had some bumpy years in the last couple of years, and it's really frustrating to feel like you're building momentum and then to have another setback. Um, And it's part of the journey and it's part of a big life of running. And I know if we take a really step back and look at the forest versus the trees, it can feel like
Mm,
a blip in time. But when you're in it, New York City Marathon was the first marathon I was healthy for since spring 2023. So it had also been a long time of building up, getting sick, having injuries, having life things happen. So that was also, I think, what part of what made New York City so special and so joy-filled. Um, I hope future Corky stays healthy because she has some bucket list races that she would like to do. One includes getting back into the ultra world. Um, I also think I have some more sub 3 marathons in me. Um, but you also have to be able to stack healthy seasons to make these
Yeah.
things happen. So, um, yeah, I think just giving myself grace along the way while also not counting myself out at 42 that I don't still have breakthroughs ahead of me because I think I do. And if I don't, it's okay. I truly love the training. I love the routine. I love being a runner. Race day is one day. Um, but if I could stay healthy and just keep running, that would be the dream for me.
Yeah. And I think, again, kind of everything you've said here, where it's as long as running, I'm like combining words here, as long as running continues to be this space where you connect to your freedom, then in that connecting to your freedom, you're going to continue to take those risks that feel good, that feel fun, that do tap into like that inner competitive nature. And it's really just a matter of not really like it's not, I don't mean to minimize it, but it's just kind of like staying healthy, right? And like what that's your foundation. If you're healthy, imagine all the things that you can do. So for sure, I now I'm getting so inspired by women who are older than me. So I'm just like you. I'm 42 years old. And I've had my moments where I'm like, I guess those PRs are behind me and they're just kind of there. And then I'm reading stories of women who are like, I have not had a PR in 20 years, but I just had one now. And it's beating a time from 20 years ago. And I'm like, this is one of the beauties of us being able to have access to the stories of women who are aging as runners that were like, oh, actually, when we thought the peak, right? Like, well, we thought, peak runner was in their 30s or like late 20s. And now we're realizing like that is one peak. And
Mhm.
then there's other peaks. But in order to reach that other peak, we do have to be creative with how we're training. We do have to be creative with how we're mentally viewing the process of training. So I just, I know it's there. I know it's there for you. And listen, if it took 10 years, right? Because you had said 10 years of like being able to 10 years of consistent training to have a New York City like you had last year, where it's like barely any training coming off of an injury. Can you imagine, like, can you even just imagine what the next 10 years of running has for you? Like it's so open-ended. And I think that's what makes running really exciting. Okay. Next question I have for you is how do you celebrate yourself as a runner?
I didn't used to. I would cross the finish line even when I had a PR and, or achieve the goal and I'd be excited. I'd be like, okay, what else can I do? And in hindsight, I'm sad for my former self because we don't know when our last PR is happening. And they can feel silly in the big picture, really, of life. Like it's a small thing in the big scope of the world. And as runners, we care so much about who we are and our goals. And I've cared a lot about some of my PRs, but I wish that I had just kind of hit the pause on, okay, what's next? And
Mhm.
really celebrated it. Um, I'm also, though, somebody who usually after a big build and a big race, I'll book a vacation. So I will then go put my feet up, in Mexico or St. Martin or something, and just truly take time off mentally, physically, emotionally, and just recharge. It can be a challenge figuring out where that fits with coaching, and coaches absolutely should have time off, but
Mhm.
also how do you work it into the season in a way where you aren't, you know, unavailable for your runners when they're building up to their goal race. And that's a hard thing to navigate. I still struggle with it personally as a coach. Um, yeah, creating boundaries is, um, while still being accessible is a balancing act that I still have not mastered. But yeah, I think taking a vacation, truly celebrating, sleeping in, eating and drinking what you want to without thinking about how is this going to impact how your stomach feels for a running couple hours
Mhm.
because you're just off. Yeah, I think a vacation is absolutely the best way to celebrate after a goal race.
I love how it's the celebration is taking a break from all the things that we think about to prep for our next run, right? Like
Yeah.
that's because it's so much mental prep that goes into thinking about prepping for your run, doing your run, recovering from your run, prepping for another run. So I love that. Okay.
Yeah. And then you're refreshed, recharged, and then ready for the next one too. You're not in that constant hamster wheel, which at some point does lead to burnout.
Absolutely. I think it's also in even just thinking of what you just said that sometimes we need that little bit of time to kind of miss the running so that we can feel reinvigorated for the running, like taking that break to look forward to it. So, okay, I have two questions left. This one is the easiest question you'll get asked all day, and it's just where can we find you and how can we better connect with you?
Yeah, I am on social media on Instagram and Threads at Coach Corky Runs. That's my handle. And my website is coachcorkyruns.com. And that's where you can find me.
Okay, this question is our last question, and it's just what are your final words for us?
My final words, just to enjoy the journey, that running is going to take detours and the journey to whatever those goals are, it's rarely linear. And my advice would be to have a sense of humor about the setbacks, give yourself some grace, learn from your body, learn from the feedback you're getting from your body. You're beautiful and perfect the way you are as a runner. Comparison is often the thief of joy. And to just own who you are as a runner unapologetically, while also recognizing that we can get better and we can learn by listening to coaches, run with running buddies and clubs that none of us know it all either. So just be a student of the sport and have so much fun.
Thank you so much for those words, for everything, for joining me. And yeah, that's all. That's all I'm going to say. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And everyone, we'll see you next time. Bye.